Chat, remember to guard your privacy and abide by community rules. Got it. Thank you, YouTube. All right. So I haven't been doing these things on any kind of a schedule, and I will fix that. I'm messing with different things as far as recording this and I don't know, podcast ideas, whatever. But anyway, I'm going to get started on the idea that I had, and that's diversifying the forage base. We've got a situation at the pond starting. Frank, what's up, man? Welcome back. Thanks for showing up. I was talking about the pond and what's going to be happening going forward. A few ideas that I had in regards to how this stuff actually works in the field. I think that's the part that sometimes people forget about that I have. I do this in the field quite a bit. Midwest, what's up, man? So the idea here is we're seeing some nice fish being caught at the pond. Young man caught one yesterday, probably 3 pounds or so. They didn't weigh it, but we're getting good growth. We're seeing good things happening, but we're pretty restricted on diversity. Like for the most part, what we've got are bluegill. Um, I have reintroduced red ear into the pond last fall. I didn't really like. We were sold what was called a mixture of bluegill and red ear, but after one season, I hadn't seen any red ear in the pond at all. So I introduced. I think I bought 600 or 800 more. They were small because it was all I could get, but I put those in last fall. So there's bluegill and there's red ear and our bass. And like I said, in 15 months have grown to 3 pounds, the best ones, and even the slowest ones have grown to a pound and a half or so. So, we've got good growth, and that's the point that I'm going to try to articulate is the measurable results. So we will see, like we've been catching bass that are eating these bluegill primarily on the feeder and measuring their growth. And we're using a measurement called relative weight, which we've talked about many times, but I'll hold it up for new folks. So we're comparing the weights of the bass to the weights on this chart. And they've been from 100% to about 140%, a few a little higher than that. If we go in and add shad, which is what's going to happen probably next spring, what we won't see is a change in measurable results, meaning I'm not going to add threadfin shad, diversifying it from mostly bluegill to bluegill and shad, and then see the bass grow at a significantly higher rate than what they're already growing right now. That's the part people get lost, right? And I'm not stocking those thread fins for that reason. Like the bass are already growing great. I don't really have to do anything. But when you diversify it that way, you have different behaviors from the shad and the bluegill, completely different behaviors. So that creates different. That means the bass are going to use habitats that you set up in the pond in different ways. And especially in like these, I've noticed in the ponds like they're smaller than like 5 acres, and they're bluegill only, and they're on feed. You can grow great fish, but sometimes the fishing can be really hard 3, 4, 5 years in because the bass get really smart. It's a really small environment and they understand it. So by diversifying the fish that they eat, by changing up, giving them some snacks, some free meals, or in this case, adding threadfin shad and completely changing the dynamics of the fishery, you kind of open yourself up to using different lures and giving yourself different opportunities because the bass will be feeding in different ways on multiple species of fish. And that's what I'm going for when I stock these shad primarily. We've already actually put shad in there once, and they've done this to me in many ponds. just kind of vanished. It's like you saw some light schools of them around, and they just didn't take. And that's not real normal, but it happens, I guess. And I guess with threadfins, you have to be aware that weather will dictate their abundance. And we probably just had, for whatever reason, like a weird weather pattern and didn't agree with them. But for the sake of, like I said, just diversifying the forage base in the pond, and I've noticed it over the years, like I like thread fins for that. I like thread fins for kind of taking a stagnant pond that is hard to fish, that the fish are there and they're smart and they're growing fine, but they're still hard to catch, and changing it up just enough with the forage base to, get them biting, get them active. Thread fins tend to add a little more kind of surface activity to the water, to the pond. What's up, everyone? 3 people today. Sweet. Not bad for no announcements. Make sure nobody wrote anything in. Midwest, Frank. Nope, everybody's cool. So, I wrote dudes don't listen. Man, I've had a run of dudes don't listen, and that's interesting. I've been consulting on ponds a long time, and anybody who it's a weird business because it's not a big industry. So I figured anybody who called me, it'd be better. It's better to be useful, better to be a source of good information than no information, or, only help people for money, that kind of thing. So if anyone called me, yeah, Frank, I hear you, man. Frank wrote in and said that he thinks most customers and most industries that way, and that I think that's true. And I try to recognize that in the way that I'm treated, and then not act that way. I'm sure I probably have a tendency. It's probably natural, but I don't know. So going back to dudes don't listen. They call for advice and they're interested, in what's going on. They're motivated, and they get on the internet and they read everything. They come across me or whatever, and there's Debo writing something in. I have to talk to him in a minute. I'm asking questions about this live stuff. Anyway, so I don't know, man. It's like you tell people. I mean, it's based on experience, And I watch the same things happen over and over and over again. Like these guys, they get fired up, they get a lake or a pond or whatever, and they get online, they read all about everything, and they just go crazy taking it in. And it's kind of a shotgun type of effect where they're just firing randomly, just, with their money, just in all directions. And the world is a type of place where if people can make a sale on you, they're going to make a sale on you, and that's where, it's just exactly what people do in this business. And the thing about it is too, with ponds is like, you can sell somebody, like I can sell somebody crawfish all day long and for forage for their bass, say. And is that ripping them off? Not really. I mean, the bass are eating an additional meal, right? So technically you get a feel good feeling, and you're putting your money into forage and you're putting it in the water and the bass are eating it. Okay, great. And will that change the bite? Absolutely. You can change the bite. I've done that plenty of times, different types of forage like that. I'm not really talking about that way. I'm not talking about changing the fishability. I'm talking about like straight up dollars to weight in bass. When you're buying forage and stocking it for bass, you're wasting your money. Okay, that's just math. That's not my opinion, because I've seen guys do it. I've seen guys guys don't listen. They completely will not harvest any bass from their pond, and they'll go to buying the shad, they'll go to buying the crawfish, they'll go to buying the minnows, they'll go to buying everything up and stocking it, and all that stuff is going to waste. I mean, it's just being consumed, and it goes back to what we were talking about earlier in this cast right here, the weights of these fish, a measurable result. Like, did you did you spend all that money and see a jump in your 21-inch bass? Did you even weigh and measure your 21-inch bass to see if there was an improvement in their size? Or are you just throwing bait in there and hoping for the best? Because I can promise you that's foolish. But I watch it day in, day out, year after year. And like I said, dudes don't listen. Last dude didn't listen. I told him, don't put crappie in this pond. 2-acre pond, Central Texas. So you don't want crappie in it. Go to the river to catch them. Go to the lake to catch them. You don't want them. So he did it. And now he's calling me and he's talking about all the comparisons he's trying to make with my results. And I'm like, my results and your results are not ever going to be the same. You didn't do the same thing I did. You didn't listen. And Frank's writing one in. It's fading away on me there, Frank. Let me bring it back up. Does harvesting bass and feeding forage simultaneously produce better results? Or is a harvesting enough if bass growth is the goal? So yeah, you're going to be in situations, Frank, where, and I guess the best way to put it right now, if I was just to generally throw out, hey, you should do this at all the ponds you fish, and it's going to be harvesting bass. But it's simply because no harvest of any kind of fish has been done in years. So since everything's been managed kind of, this way, and then me saying manage it this way, that's not, rocket science really. But to be technically accurate, you need to measure like the fish at every pond, at every lake, to understand. Like, you can have seasons where like you'll see the 14s to 16-inch bass are thin. Like, normally your 14s or 16s are pretty heavy, and again, if you measure and pay attention, and that means length, weight, done right, calculated relative weights, and you have data that you've acquired over years, if you start measuring, using the fish you catch like data and writing that down, you'll have something to track. And, when I talk about this stuff, I talk about it from a place like that, where I ran electrofishing surveys and I wrote down, all that information. And for me, like, you can't really see it in the field. People always want to make, like, I guess it's kind of an ego thing where they can look at a fish and tell whether it's healthy or whatever. I couldn't see it that way. I had to look at it like on the page. Like, I had to look at the data list, the 12-inch fish, and lined up, on a spreadsheet. And when you can see how many 12s, how many 13s, how many 14s, and their weights, and their corresponding weights, and their corresponding relative weights, and you can look at all that data, on a spreadsheet, it becomes really obvious. Like, you're like, oh wow, the 12s to 14s look terrible. The 16 and 18-inch fish, the 3 that we caught look good, and then the 24s, 20s and up look good, which is normal. But that's kind of how, like, I had to do it. I couldn't just, I had to take the measurements, and I had to look at that in that way. And then I could, do my job. So, yeah, dudes don't listen, man. That's why I don't mind going on online and telling everybody exactly how to do this stuff, because 99 times out of 100, whatever I tell them to do, they're not going to listen to, bro. I can promise you that. They're going to go read some crap somewhere. But to go back on to because that's It's an in-depth question Frank asked there. It looks simple, but it's actually deceptively complex. So when you're managing a pond, you'll have years when you're harvesting a certain size, a certain slot, 12 to 14s or 12 to 15s, whatever, and then you might have a few years where you're not. Um, yeah, Frank, you are a complex guy. No, that's good. It's a good question, and it's important because again, you can't go like onto the internet and like I don't know, I've been talking for 15 minutes and listen to this for 15 minutes and then leave here and go manage a pond like me. I mean, it's just not going to happen. Um, there's just so many things. I wouldn't say that I take them for granted. It's so many things that I can't explain. So many things like background information that you have to have that if you don't have, you kind of start out from an illogical place. And if you start out from an illogical place, you'll never get to the right answer, from the wrong place to begin with. So, I don't know. This is a hard subject to break down sometimes. And the only reason I'm even halfway good at it is because I've been doing it for so long. Like I said, I've tried to help most people who come my way. And, here we are. Hey, 5 folks, four, down to 4. Uh-oh. I'm losing the audience. So, yeah, back to dudes don't listen. I'm gonna go back to that because that's a pet peeve. It's just crazy. Um, I don't know. Sometimes guys get good at a job and they get a lot of money, and then somehow that money translates into them thinking they know like everything you know too. And I'm not sure how that works, but I see that a lot. So if I could warn against anybody, if you ever get lucky and get a good job and you get a lot of money, just remember, it doesn't mean you know how to manage a pond, or it doesn't mean you have to know how to do anybody else's job. But I don't know. I'm lucky that way though. I got a degree in the field, that I liked, but I also have 30 years experience in the field working with fish, in the field. And I have some friends, I have some colleagues, that are way more experienced than I. Um, Fish hatchery guys. Brian Simmons is one of them down at Ona Williams Fish Hatchery. The dude is, if I ever had lake management money, I'd hire Brian to manage my pond. He's good. Um, he's a good guy too, real good dude. But yeah, dudes don't listen. Um, I'm not sure why that is. I try not to be that way, just because I've seen so much of it in my life. Let me go back and double check for any messages that might have popped up I missed. No, I think I'm good. Anyway, I don't know. I had one guy. Speaking of dudes don't listen, he he's insistent on building his own drain system. He could do it. He's an engineer. Dangerous. That's the problem sometimes. Again, you're good at one thing, doesn't necessarily make you good at another thing. And he took on a siphon drain job, and didn't do it exactly right. And it cost him. It cost him a flood. It cost him. I think he might have gotten in trouble by not permitting the work too, which can get you in a lot of trouble. Um, that's one thing people don't realize. I see a lot of dudes don't listen. You can't build a pond anywhere you want to. It's not how that works. Um, Ponds in Georgia were built years ago for erosion control. You get one free from the government, but today that's completely different. If you want to build a pond on your property, because I guess by the way the quote unquote laws, rules, however you want to look at it, you don't own the water, right? So you can you have to have permission to impound water you don't own, is basically how the state of Georgia looks at it. So now there's all kinds of rules in there that say, well, this is a wetland. So you can't disturb a wetland to build your pond because this wetland is a higher quality than the pond that you're going to be building. And the way you can make that all go away is called mitigation, which just means paying like $30,000 or $40,000 per acre of wetland you disturb. They set aside an acre of wetland someplace else, and you basically just pay your way out of that. So developers with money don't really worry about wetland delineation problems. They just buy their way out of it with mitigation, where regular farmer people, regular people don't have the delineation money and can't build a pond on their property for that reason. I've seen a lot of that. And that's just a Georgia perspective. That doesn't apply to North Carolina, Alabama, South Carolina, Florida. All those places are different. And yeah, so building a pond is tricky. Even refurbishing a pond can be tricky in certain places. It depends on local laws. I've seen situations where, the dam was broken or the drain system needed repair, and then basically they just couldn't get the permission from the powers that be in the government. And what was a pond wasn't anymore. The dam had to be removed, and it went back to being a stream, not being a pond anymore. So I've seen all those types of scenarios play out all across the southeastern United States in every kind of weird form or fashion. I was an expert witness in court a few times over crap like that, which I think I signed something that says I can't talk about that, but I can talk about being an expert witness. I just can't talk about what we talked about in the court case. But it was stupid. I mean, it was just like what we're talking about here. Dudes don't listen. I don't know. What are you going to do? I'm going to double check for any more questions and drop off. Listen to this and make sure the audio's good. I'm assuming the audio's good. Nobody's complaining. All 6 of you are out there listening to me. I appreciate you. If you guys have any questions, I'll chill for a second. Could try to go over a half an hour anyway. It helps with the views and the viewership time. I've got to do something on YouTube to bump my viewership times up, because I'm trying to get some money out of it. I'm trying to make some passive money out of this stuff. And I think thanks, Midwest, man. Appreciate you. Yeah, I figured out, I think you have to turn up the mic until it's in the yellow a little bit. You don't want it going all the way to the red, but you want it to have... I'm learning. I'm old. I wasn't born with all this junk. So, yeah, I don't know if you guys saw the picture. I don't even know, on YouTube, I make a post where that daggone post even is. I don't know how to check my posts on YouTube yet. I have to be more in tune with, hey, thanks for coming on, whoever you are. If you have any pond questions or anything, let me know. We're just hanging out. Like I said, running up the YouTube viewership moments or minutes. You have to Midwest, man. Dude, was that you? I was going to ask you, Midwest. Was that you? We would talk on... You're the lawyer in Chicago or up there somewhere on Instagram. Was that you, man? I hope that was you, because we talked, I don't know, a few times or something, and I cracked a joke about having lawyers, being a gangster and having lawyers, and then you vanished. If that was you, and I hope it was, because I thought you died, bro, and I hope you didn't die. I hope you just got off Instagram. All right, that is you. All right, man. I'm glad you're not dead. I thought you. I thought you left us the way you. The way you abruptly left. That happens. I have some married buddies that get in trouble on Instagram for whatever reasons. I don't know. I'm not married. Right on, man. Asian carp. I remember that. Yeah, they're a nuisance, man. We got so many competing. Yeah, you did. You just dropped off the earth, man. I was worried about you, bro. I thought, man, you know, I've gotten to that age. I was 50. I just turned 50, and well, not just, but I turned 50 this year, and man, I've had some, buddies, and lost mom a few years ago, but she was not 50. I've had, friends like classmates, like so and so's gone, so and so's gone. It's like, geez, oh Pete. So I naturally came to the conclusion that you dropped dead on me, bro. I'm glad you didn't drop dead. All right, Jim's writing in. Let's see what Jim has to say. Sorry, boys, I got this weird. Cleaned up water. I'm not really sure what you mean, Jim. It's really hard to read because it goes in and out. Spoon plugging with Buck Perry, and the biggest problem these days is cleaned up water. Tell me what you mean by cleaned up. Pressured? Overpressured? Meaning they're cleaned out the fish? I don't really know what you mean, man. But no. Good to see you, Midwest, man. I'm glad you're good, man. That's good. Speaking of dudes don't listen. Dudes don't listen. The guy with the dam that blew up, that was bad. Pretty sure he caught a suit from the neighbor on some flooding issues on that one. And then it breaks down to like it's like the same patterns of language, it's the same patterns of behavior over and over and over again. People, you'll see it on here. All right, sorry guys, I'm getting my train of thought broke by reading, and I'm not sure how visible the comments even are to you guys. Can you guys just read these comments? Because I see them for a second and then they disappear. Oh, Jim was talking about water clarity issues. Okay, yeah, yeah. Okay, so yeah, that makes more sense. And then Midwest, he closed up private practice and got a public defender's job in 21. Oh, right on, man. That's cool, man. Public defender. So that means if I get in trouble and I can't afford a lawyer, you're the guy they appoint to me. That's good, man. Because yeah, you're a good dude. That's a good job to have. People need help like that. I don't know crap about the court, and knock on wood, I don't want to know anything about it. I haven't had any of those issues before. I hear these guys talking around me at the bar and stuff, complaining about public or not public, like what are they called? I don't even know. I'm glad I don't know too. Probation officers and POs and shit like that. I'm like, man, I don't know nothing about that. I just want to fish. But no, Midwest, that's good, man. That's a good job. I heard some kids talking about coming out of Georgia too, talking about law. It's not like everything else they sell you down there. It's not a guaranteed road to riches just because you go get a fancy law degree. They want you to think that, but it's not true. Going back to Jim's question though about changing watercolors, we're going to see a lot of that in the next month or so, probably everywhere. You can start getting the turnovers. I was talking a little bit about it earlier with a few dudes online, and turnovers are funny, man. Like it's a complex water chemistry practice or water chemistry phenomenon, I guess, that happens every year, And up north, it happens twice. You get the ice out turnover, and then you get the spring turnover and a fall turnover up there. And in the fall in the south, we get the turnovers here. So it's a little bit different, and I'm not super familiar with like the two turnover ponds per season, like because I've always worked in the south, so those turnovers are weird. But what ends up happening, like the bottom part of the lake, when it turns over, has nutrients. So when you get a turnover, you'll get these weird color changes in the water because of the nutrients that's going on. And like right now, there's going to be a lot of weird nutrients in the water. Like we got really warm water around here, and then so with rains and any kind of runoff that bring nutrients in, you're going to get weird kind of algae blooms in the super warm type of years like this. You'll get odors. I've had these conversations, so I'm just kind of going back to thinking about things I've talked about with people. You'll get weird colors in the water. You'll get like sometimes it'll look like turquoise paint floating in the water. Sometimes maybe just like a light green paint floating in the water. You won't be able to see very deep in the water. It has like a pea soup kind of a green to it sometimes. And then it can shift to like a gray color too. Like that turquoise color especially will shift to like a light gray. And that's not good. That's never good when the light gray junk is on the water. You got phosphorus loading issues. The last time I saw a pond like that, the lady had a illegal like dog kennel animal facility, because it wasn't just dogs she had there in her garage, but it was just like in a residential neighborhood, and she had a creek, just down from on her property, just down the hill from her house, and she had all these dogs and cats and I mean everything. It was crazy. In like crated all in the garages in the garage in there, and she was trying to be like a nice person, I guess, but she was not handling that waste. She was just literally hosing it out into the yard and letting it run down the hill and into my pond. So that created some fish kill issues and some water quality issues that were quite noticeable for a long time. And it took a long time. I was like, it's like there's raw sewage coming into this thing, like it's weird. We couldn't figure it out why the pond was behaving the way that it was for the longest time. And it ended up being that lady. And once she cleaned up the, hey, thanks for listening, Frank. Sure, man. I appreciate you. Once she cleaned up her act and got the pets and crap out of there, all my water quality issues in the pond stopped. Anyway, let me double check for any more questions, and it's been over half an hour. No point in being on here forever. Well, good. Oh, Jim's coming back through. Oh, I see what you're saying, man. Yeah, you're getting water clarity issues around. Oh yeah. Interesting, Jim. Yeah, Midwest. I hear that, man. I try to. I try, man. Like, I don't know what, like, I said, I went to school, and I got the degree. And a lot of times that's where people's, you know, it'd be like going and getting a law degree but never being a lawyer. You know what I mean? There's a difference between that type of person and somebody like you who had a private practice and then you went and became a public defender. Now you work for this, like the Chicago, city of Chicago, or wherever you work, whatever. But those work experiences make you better at the law, you know? And just like my pond experiences made me better at managing ponds. So you could go type out all of your legal experience, in a caption on Instagram. It's not going to help anybody win a case, Maybe it will, one smart person who can figure it out, but for the most part, that's just, it's the same thing I'm doing. You just tell people what to do, and oh God, pray some of it settles in there, because good Lord knows they're not going to listen. It was a stipulation with Clint. I said, I'll manage your Sugar Hill Pond for free, but free comes with one caveat. It's do what I say, not what you read, not what you think is right, exactly what I say. And fortunately, Clint exists in reality. He's a business owner and has all the same problems in his life, and listened, and now we have really good fish growth going on over there that we're proud of. And I'm glad people can watch and learn. And then that way we can progress, because literally up until like 2 years ago, I'm having conversations with these dudes. You can't grow fish like just the amount I just grew them live on the online, and it's like, okay, we can stop arguing about that now. We've done that and proven that. And I guess it's unfortunate that I can't just say, hey, I've done this before. And people go, oh, wow, that's amazing. I didn't know that. I've literally got to, whatever. I'm trying to read. Let's see. Yeah, Jim, I hear you on the weeds, man. I've done it my life. I've spent my life controlling aquatic vegetation, bro. It is a challenge all the way around to keep weeds from impacting your fishery. And the smaller a body of water gets, the easier it is for the weeds to impact you. And that's because usually your smaller bodies of water are also your shallower bodies of water. And mental note, don't drink sodas when you go live. Generally, your smaller bodies of water are shallower bodies of water, which are impacted significantly more because they're shallow. Light can reach the bottom, a larger percentage of a pond bottom. Like, it's really easy for you to have, say, a pond that's, say, 2 or 3 acres in size, that's, say, 8 feet deep, where light can reach the bottom in 100% of the pond. Like, it's possible for 100% of that pond to be grown over because the light, it doesn't get deep enough anywhere in the pond to restrict that light. Whereas, like, you go to Lake Lanier, and where 80% of the water's 100 feet deep or whatever, that's not physically possible in a bigger, deeper lake. So that's the main difference between weed control, in bodies of water is understanding that it's going to take a significant effort, a more significant effort in smaller bodies of water due to the shallow water fact. Rob, what's up, man? Glad to see you on here. We're just talking about, I don't know, whatever we can make up to talk about. I was going live to learn about the software some more. Double check my microphone. And talking about how dudes don't listen. Which they don't. Let's just go stock whatever. Midwest has got one coming in. Some of the deepest pond depths that I have managed. Well, let's take that back to Dudes Don't Listen. There was once upon a time a guide who will remain nameless who decided to venture off into the world that I exist in, this one of managing ponds. And he had a man with a lot of money. And yeah, Midwest. Midwest has got a follow up question to depth and how it affects forage, and all this will apply. Okay, so he was a guide on major lakes and reservoirs around Georgia, and he did not need he didn't think he needed any fish management help, but again, it doesn't work the way a lot of these guys think. What he was doing was on his trips to public water where he caught, say, I don't know, 7, 8+ pound bass, he would truck them back and put them in the lake that he had private access to. And had done that for a few years. So I was called in because the problem wasn't the fact that they didn't have any big fish. They had plenty of big fish. That they had put them all there. The problem was those big fish were skeletons. They went in at 10 pounds and then they were swimming around after not very long time in that water. They're losing weight, significant amount of pounds of weight. They're going from 10 to 6.5, 7. Because they don't understand balance. They don't understand you can't put as many 10-pounders in a lake as you want to. That's just not how that works. And it got back into, it's kind of a good wrap up to where we started this whole conversation. I'm talking about trying to buy and grow forage for an overcrowded bass population. And it doesn't work. And they did. They bought and spent money, and they got me there, and they asked me what they needed to do. They told me what they had stocked, and they asked me what they needed to do to not make the bass grow, just make the bass keep the same weights. But the amount of bass that they had put in there was so significantly higher than what could be supported naturally that there was nothing you could do. You had to get some bass out. You had to, the system had been kind of wasted from the top down. And there was no amount that they could put in there that could help those fish, just like I described before. There's literally, like, it doesn't matter. Bill Gates doesn't have enough money to buy that many fish to make those bass even hold their weight. Like, you really need to set the lake up so it produces the forage you need. And they disrupted that balance by throwing all those big bass in there. The other thing that they did, going back to your depth question, Midwest, was they made this quote unquote small, I think it was like 20 acres, 25 acres, something in that vicinity. They made it look like this replica of a bigger lake in Georgia. And they dug it deep. I mean, they brought the loaders in and they dug this 20-acre thing down, I think 40 feet or something. But it was only like 20 acres. So it's hard to explain, but you're only going to have oxygen levels down. On 20 acres of water, your thermocline will set up and you won't have much oxygen under like maybe 12 feet, most places. So they just went in under that. The natural lake went down to like 15 feet. And they could have just left it alone. They didn't have to put all that equipment in there and do all that digging. And I mean, it costs money to dig dirt. And they dug 15 or 20 more feet of dirt more than what they needed out of the bottom of that. and didn't have to. So they just wasted hundreds of thousands of dollars digging that depth out, because that depth is not important. In shallow water, in shallower lakes, the most important water is 8 or 10 feet. Where the light penetrates. Once it gets much further under that, you need a significantly bigger lake before the thermocline, deepens up to the point where, I guess it's like a physics thing. The smaller the lake, the shallower the oxygen level, right? So if you dig a 1 acre pond 8 feet deep, you're going to have oxygen all the way down to the bottom. You can dig the same 1 acre pond 800 feet deep. You're still going to have oxygen 8 feet deep or so, right? That's just how it is. So it gets to a point where you're wasting your money. You need some depth. You don't want like the whole pond being 3 feet deep. Of course, that's not good for the fish either. The water gets too warm, and the temperatures swing too drastically, and that stresses them too. But at the same time, you have to be aware of the size of the lake, what you're doing with the water, what you're doing with it fish wise, and what's possible. They wasted all that money digging that stupid lake that deep. The fish were never down there in the summer either. They would all stack up on the thermocline about 12 feet deep. So there was just, a couple $100,000 I could have wasted in bluegill feeding all those skinny bass. I don't know. It's crazy though. It's a crazy world, man. And how dudes like that get that much money to blow, I'll never understand it. Double check the questions. So yeah, to finish off, Midwest comes in with the deeper depths affect the forage I select. And absolutely not. The depth of the lake is relatively unimportant to me. I don't really care. Like I said, I don't want the whole thing, a couple feet deep, and I don't need it 1,000 feet deep either. And it really is a site by site deal. Yeah, exactly. Midwest, you create a lot of open water, with no, um, I guess for lack of a better term, surface area, right? So you want the bottom of the pond to be in the oxygenated level, because then all the sticks and all of everything is exposed to the oxygen, and then all the insects in the bottom of the pond are exposed to the oxygen. They can live there, right? And if you have a large amount of surface area of, just leaves and sticks and things like that in that oxygenated zone, that's all really good fish habitat. Whereas if you, by doing what he did, instead of having, all the stumps and sticks and everything right there around the 12-foot mark where you still have oxygen holding, and you'll have oxygen, you've got a perfect setup for your deep water setup for your summertime. He created a situation where, he had no deep water set up in the summertime. His fish were suspended out over the edges, basically over the under the dock and under the pilings, and under any of the brush piles that happened to be above those thermoclines. And a bulk of the volume of the water was unusable because it was low to no oxygen for a bulk of the season, especially where we were in Georgia. It was really hot there, so that water depth was, I don't know. I thought it was a poorly designed pond for the size and the area that it was in. And I thought they wasted a lot of money because they didn't understand basic limnology, the study of lakes. Fit in perfectly to Dudes Don't Listen, doesn't it? God, I could sit here and go on for 2 years about Dudes Don't Listen, but anyway, let me double check the double checker. And I don't see any more comments. So thanks for rocking with me, boys. And I'm going to get off, and I'll be back on Sunday morning about 11 o'clock before the football games start. We'll do it again later.